Is that because you keep? Is that because you call that my issue? Is that because you claimed if your faulted cunt? Is that because you claimed if you had a pin on as a whore that your cunt would be viable to be viable? So is that because you just call it like a whore? Is that because you claimed if you had a pin and you're just automatically viable any which way to viable as a whore? Is that because you claimed if? Is that because you claimed if you actually collaborated my life as a whore that yet again you keep claiming that was a reflection of me as a whore? As anybody can collaborate with somebody's life, that wouldn't have been a reflection of me as a whore. It's not because you call that viable or my issue that your cunt covers with my life. It's not because you claimed if you had put on before that your cunt was or even afterwards would have been good to how I'd be viable before. It's not because you keep claiming that that's your main point as a whore, like that would have been a viable thing as a whore. It's not because you want to collaborate with some other value as a whore and collaborate that your fault is cunt. It's not because you call your cunt like that would. It's not because you would call your cunt like that would have been a thing as a whore. Like that would have been a thing as a whore. Good. That's not my issue. A bunch of people that are not personal to or with as a whore agree with. It's not because you call that my issue. You want to make me irritated and waste your pooch as a whore or inviable waste your pooch wouldn't have been viable to as a whore. It's not because you claim just some faulted puss had a pin on my body as a whore that their little cunt actually would have been viable to as a whore. It's not about how I treat somebody with respect. It's not because you're calling yourself viable to as a whore. It's not because you claim if you just called that a thing as a whore that was viable as a whore. I have bodily change. That's my weight's going down. I'm looking. This is not because you just called it. It's not because you claim I'm not usually viable, and it's not because you claim that my creativities would just go off into some other value that they ever did to call a thing as whore. It's not because you call that my issue. Your puss likes to cause home with the weight's going down. So the next stuff is because you claimed if you had a pin as a whore that yet again you were viable to. It's because you claimed if you had a pin as a whore that you were viable to have a life as a whore and wish your pooch was a whore. Typically those things when you have an opinion, go sit on the outside of my body and don't invalidate me all the way. It's not because yet again you're giving my life. So it's not about how I live by some little horse interest as a whore. Sometimes you keep calling that like that would be a thing as a whore. That's not my issue. Some lack of boundary whore. It's not because you keep claiming if a bunch of pooches I'm not personal to. That's not my issue. You have a particular interest on my life outside of a whore. My life's not. It's not because you keep calling your cunt like that would be a thing as a whore. It's not because you called your cunt. It's not because you keep claiming if you call something viable as a whore. That's not my issue. Your faulted puss like playing around with my value as a whore because you have a complete. It's not because you claimed if your faulted little poo kept calling something viable as a little whore. It's not because before I speak you give my life some other as a whore and call that a. It's not because you call that my issue that your faulted puss. It's not because you claim that some faulted pooch. It's not because you claimed that it was viable that your pooch had an interest on my life as a whore. My life's not for that. It's not because you call that viable as you keep calling that a thing as a whore that your pooch has interest on. It's not because you call. It's not because you're calling. It's not because again